Hi, my name is Matt Manalo. I'm an artist and a community organizer here in Houston, Texas. Um, I'm a graduate with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Painting from the University of Houston. And I've been making art, I don't know, since I was a kid, I would say. I also founded the Philippine Artists of Houston, and I run an alternative art space called the A-Leaf Art House, which is located in the heart of A-Leaf. It's a shipping container gallery space where we focus on community and organizing and sustainability. There was a point in my life where I was questioning a lot about myself and my history. Being a first-generation immigrant who came here from the Philippines in 2004, I had to think about my personal story and how that even happened. So it meant me digging into the history of Philippine and the US relations, and it brought me to just questioning a lot of the awful things that happened, to the people in the Philippines and to my ancestors, and thinking about like how I could bring history in a way that is digestible, making it visually attractive so that folks would be interested in digesting the knowledge, because I noticed that a lot of Filipinos here in the US, they kind of just become very lax when it comes to history and when it comes to, as long as they're, living their life and going to work and all that, it kind of like just becomes repetitive, and you kind of like not have any more time to even gain knowledge of what has happened in the past. So I think history is very important. And part of that conversation was brought into colorism and the idea of borders, the idea of even privilege, classism, racism. And so I talk a lot about these topics in my work, while also navigating my personal history and how myself navigating as a first-generation immigrant, within this U.S. construct. And basically that's what my whole art practice is doing research, and how can I make the research visually delicious for the consumer. But then when we start talking about weaving as well, I can also bring in the idea of the A-Leaf Art House, where it is community-centered, it's community-focused. And so the idea of weaving was brought into the attention of me collaborating with a local A-Leaf fashion designer, my friend Danny Wynn, who designed a giant loom for me. So it's a weaving loom, and the whole idea for us was to weave the community together, metaphorically and literally, by having folks come in and either donate their own fabric, and they can be part of building a tapestry. And so the tapestry that is done with the weaving, with everyone involved, is kind of like the visual, physical evidence that that community being together is possible. Like, strength in numbers, and strength in numbers not only in thought, but also with action and collective action and stuff like that. When I started doing programs for A-Leaf Art House, that's also when I decided, not really, actually, it was before, when I was still in art school, where I just didn't have any money to buy art materials. And that's kind of like what jump-started my whole process of using found objects and reused materials. is because like I couldn't afford it at first, right? But then the whole idea kind of just grew in with me, where I was being conscious about the materials that I'm using, about the waste that's coming out of my studio. And through that, because artists, one of our main roles is to beautify our environment, right? Like we're hired to paint murals, to think of ways where we can reach out to the community and think about ways where we can make the environment, kid friendlier or just overall more beautiful than how we found it. And with that thought, I just became really conscious with that. And because a lot of the materials that's being sourced is also imported. And so again, thinking about my immigrant experience and how the import and the export of different materials are involved in that, and also the labor that is involved with it. So a lot of these folks are underpaid, overworked, and all of that. And most of the time, even with the acrylic paint and all that, like mining these colors, mining these pigments, involve a lot of abuse, like labor abuse. And because the whole idea is to make a more sustainable environment, especially with the A-Leaf Art House, not only for artists, but also for the community members who activate the space with us, we wanted to make the art materials to be sustainable as well, and make it also where, if we ever use a pigment and then, or we can use a pigment that we can probably either eat or just dispose of and not worry about its effects on nature. So we started growing a garden, which was sponsored by, which is actually funded by the Smithsonian Asian Art Museum. And we're building a garden that is where we're growing native plants and also edible plants, where we could use these herbs and plants as sources of ink, pigment, and fibers, and then we're trying to teach that to the community as well, to making that knowledge accessible to everyone who doesn't normally have access to art or art knowledge. So that's, not only sustainability or not only thinking about the environment as a whole in terms of it making nature friendly, but also thinking about like how the community can be supported in ways where we can be living healthier, eating healthier, or living better and having a better way of life just by seeing or being surrounded by nature and beauty. And so kind of like an overall, topic where we're touching into not only art-wise, but also, as a whole, like the person as a whole.
Hi, my name is Catherine Hall. I'm an independent curator based out of New York City and former curator at Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. And I have the pleasure of being able to work with Matt Manalo on the exhibition Philippine Made, which actually opens today. This exhibition, we're really thrilled to be able to bring it to Houston Center for Contemporary Craft because I think Matt and his work is giving us the opportunity to really look at the history of craft traditions within the Philippines, and also looking at just the cultural history between both the Philippines and America as well, and Philippine-American relations, as well as looking at Matt's own personal history and how that ties into his work.
Being an artist has not really been the easiest for me. There's a lot of questions that have not been answered, or a lot of things where I've sought guidance and never got it. So a lot of these things have been self-taught, or I did it on my own accord. I'm not going to say that I'm a self-made man, because I'm not, because a lot of it is because of the people that I surround myself with, who have continued to support me and who have continued to build me up to the artist that I am right now. But also, one of the things that I learned is that failure is a big part of being an artist. To a point where I've actually made it as part of my art practice. If you see like the sculptures around behind me, there's a lot of failures involved in it, and they're conscious failures, and I take them as a way of learning, as a way of finding myself. That nothing is perfect. Me being kind of like a perfectionist, it's kind of like liberating to even take in the idea of failure and how can I take advantage of that lesson and make myself better. And then so there's failure, and then the idea of building the table, not being part of a table, but building the table and surrounding yourself with the people that you want to be sitting with in that table. I think that's one of the most important things that I've also learned, is that when you trust the people around you, then everyone gets to eat on that plate, on that table. Everyone gets to eat, everyone gets to be nourished, everyone is being elevated. And so, it's not just kind of like a one person thing, again, growing strength in numbers, I think it's one of the most important things, especially being an artist of color, in this climate, where we see a lot of violence, to Black and brown bodies. And I feel like when we work together as a community, we are able to make change, but not only change, but sustainable change that lasts. And so, that's something that the next generation could benefit from. It's not just like a one-time thing, that happens. And so, yeah, I mean, I would never trade being an artist, with any other thing. It's the most fulfilling. It's the most challenging as well, but it's definitely the most fulfilling for me.